I'm going to try to keep this to around 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Oh, hold on, I got one more person let in. My hope and my goal here, as much as I don't like talking to a camera with an empty room, I'll try to remember that everybody is out there. The home inspection industry is fragmented, right? There's some central things like Arizona has a licensing board. There's AFCI, which is kind of like your local real estate board. There's NACHI, which is the National Association of Certified Home Inspectors. And that's really where most inspectors go to get their education and maintain a certification with them. And so what I want to do, personally, I have been involved with 3 different states, probably 10 different inspection companies, bought and sold inspection companies. And what we've developed over the years has, the companies have inspected 15,000 houses in multiple states. And oh, hold on, I gotta let somebody in. Not only do I own the local Inspections Over Coffee franchise, and there's another one coming up on board soon. It'll be open probably around March. But I actually own the parent company, the franchising company, just like HomeSmart has franchises that they sell. We have Inspections Over Coffee, so we have our next 2 locations will be like in the New Hampshire and Massachusetts area. So my hope today is just to give you a little insight as to what we inspect and what we don't inspect, and that way you can go ahead and basically have your clients ready for what they should expect through the inspection process. There's a lot of inspectors out there doing their own things. They're mavericks. They're not really doing what the industry standard is. Sometimes they go way above. Sometimes they go way beyond. So now I'm gonna add a few more people here. Everybody's on realtor time, right? Hold on, actually quite the size room here. Sorry, keep having to add people. Okay, so with that being said, personally, I probably perform 4,000 or 5,000 inspections. Again, I train people all across the country. I write the templates all across the country. And I'm licensed in the state of Florida. I'm licensed in Arizona. I'm licensed with the EPA. I'm licensed for environmental stuff up in the state of Colorado. And again, what we've developed is based on the industry standards, and then also thousands and thousands of realtors and tens of thousands of clients, sort of what their level of expectations are. So kind of want to get everybody going. That way when you can, the idea here is you can coach your client before the inspection, whether it be on the sell side or the buy side, and then that way there's no surprises outside of what the findings are. They don't say, oh, the inspector didn't walk on the roof, that's the end of the world. So I'm gonna jump ahead here. There we go, that worked. We'll do it that way, okay. I already talked about all that. I'm also a certified pool operator. I was in the Navy for 8 years. I did nuclear chemistry and radiological control. So all of the submarines and aircraft carriers are run by nuclear reactors. We've got to maintain super tight chemistries on all those things. If you ever seen the guys, gals dressed up in yellow suits and orange gloves and work on radioactive valves and pumps, I did all that fun stuff too. Okay, so the first thing the point I try to get across, and I'm not going to read this stuff to you, but you can read it, and if you'd like a copy of this afterwards, let me know. The home inspection, you got to remember, right? It is, your client doesn't own the house yet. You obviously have no ownership, and I don't own the house. So we are limited to a non-invasive visual and operational inspection of the house. We can't start tearing into things. We can't open up things that are beyond the scope, because and you, the realtor on the buy side, end up taking the liability on there that we wouldn't want to do. So if there's the potential for us to damage a house, we're not going to be able to do that. An example might be if we show up to do a sewer scope and you got the sewer cleanouts outside, we could use those. That's great. But if that's not going to work for some reason and we have to remove a toilet to go into the drain line that way, that would be considered invasive, and we need permission from the south side in order to be able to do that. When you first start your inspector training, the trainer would be like, hey, put your hands behind your back and you're going to walk around a house. That's literally That's literally it. I mean, we're taking it for a little bit of a test drive where we can turn on the heat in the air if the weather serves. We can go in the attic. We can check that all the appliances are working. But again, we're making sure the refrigerator is working. We're not taking it apart and checking Freon levels and extrapolate that out for every system there, the furnace, the AC, whatever the case may be. So it's the thing I like to remind realtors so you can get your clients ready is it's no different than if you had like a 17-year-old niece or nephew who'd saved up $3,000-4,000 to buy a car, and you were going to go with them in the process of buying a car. You're acting like their car buyer advisor, right? There's no rules saying that the seller has to do anything or that they have to do anything. If it's a 1950 Corvette with no seatbelts, you don't legally have to put seatbelts in it. There's this big problem in our industry where all the inspectors they learn a little bit of code, and they start talking about nonsense that doesn't apply to the home inspection. The home inspection is a gray world. There's no rules stating that the buyer has to do anything or the seller has to do anything. Our job, again, as a home buyer advisor, is to make sure that they're not inheriting problems unknowingly. The key word being unknowingly. So let's jump ahead here. So a lot of the things you would hope, and again, hopefully this training helps you. I mean, I'd obviously love if you work with us, but if you've got your own inspector, these are some of the things that you should expect to be hearing from them, tools that they use. So I wanted to cover what some of the tools that we use. A camera, ladder, flashlight, that's common sense. Outlet testers, not just regular outlets like you would plug the TV into here, but they should have outlet testers, excuse me, to be able to test the outlet for the range and the outlet for the dryer if nothing's plugged into those to make sure that they're wired properly. Literally, a tester to test that range or dryer outlet is like the cheapest version is $4 at Home Depot. So there's no excuse not to do that. Moisture meters, water pressure gauges, laser thermometers. I actually brought, let's screw things up, a thermal camera. Now I'm going to tell you that this is not required, but as a company, we've chosen to do this because it just uncovers tons of problems. So this is about a $3,500 thermal camera. And if you can see, I think right here, if I were to put my hand there, you could see my handprint on the walls. Hopefully, I know we're doing this on a little camera, but, and the idea is as we scan, so when we do a house, we actually use this at the end of the inspection, scan the whole outside, scan the whole inside. And with temperature differences, we find water leaks, plumbing leaks, roof leaks, electrical issues, missing insulation, etc. Okay, so thermal camera, aerial drone. Listen, there's a lot of houses. My personal house is 3 stories, so it's like, I don't know, the roof's probably 40 feet in the air. Like, if we wanted to get a roofing company out there, they wouldn't even get on ladders. They would only come up and look at the roof with like a lift. So you really want, oh, hold on, I gotta admit somebody here. You would, excuse me, you would only want an inspector that has a drone, because why not work with one that has a drone so that you can get to those inaccessible areas? I mean, I'm in the HomeSmart office right now. Everybody's been in corporate. If somebody were wanting us to inspect this, there may or may not be roof access. We've all seen it's very tall. Well, with the drone, we can see everything super quick. So all of our inspectors are drone licensed. And if you're wondering how that works, you basically are this like baby version of a real pilot where you're allowed to fly an unmanned aircraft. You do get licensed with the FAA. You got to pass a test that you can read charts from the 50s. It's kind of a silly thing. Extension pole and all, it's one of my favorite tools. Basically, we all carry this very long paint extender. We put it all on the end of it. And the reason is, as you find water damage, we can figure out how severe the water damage is on the trim and the soffits and the fascia by just poking it all around there. So instead of just going, oh, there's a little bit of water damage there, we can tell if it's rotted out, should be replaced, or if it should not be. All right, let me go here. Okay. So you guys should find this pretty useful. This will be information if you want to email me. You'll see my email at the end. You'll want a copy of this. We actually include all of this information in all of our inspection reports for your client's benefit. The point is, we're going to talk about the different roof coverings. We're going to talk about whether they're damaged or defects or whatever. But what's important for you guys in the helping your client buy a house is, what is the lifespan, and if we're near the end of lifespan, what is the cost for replacing all of that? So you've got 3-tab shingles, which are, if you've ever seen them, they're next to each other and like that. That's 3-tab. Then you have architectural shingles, which are like this. And the 3-tab shingles don't last near as long. You can imagine when the architectural ones are overlapping each other, there's a lot more material there that lasts a lot longer. Concrete clay tiles, I mean, we rate 50 years. They could last a lot longer than that. You usually got to replace every couple years. If anybody is totally new to the industry, it's really important that you need to understand that the felt underlayment that is between the tiles and the roof decking does not last as long as the concrete tiles. So if your client is buying a house that, let's just say was built 18 years ago, they're going to be really close to needing to bring a roofing company in. They move all the tiles around and they replace that felt underlayment. So it's nowhere near as expensive as a whole new tile roof, but depending on the size of it, you know, it can be anywhere from like $8,000 to $20,000 if the bigger the house, because you still have all the labor of moving all the tiles around and then having to replace all the underlayment. Spray foam roofs. Okay, I don't know if anybody's ever seen one of those, but basically there's like this epoxy spray stuff. If you could clean it and respray every like 3 to 4 years, but if you don't ignore it, I've actually seen these start to fall apart and get little holes in them and create leaks after like just 5 to 7 years. If you talk to like roofing engineers, they're not a huge fan. But the problem is anytime you have a flat roof, you have water. Oh, hold on, I gotta let somebody in. What was I saying? Oh, the spray foam. Anytime you have a flat roof, the problem is that you're just going to be holding water. And anytime you're holding water, it's going to be disintegrating faster than if it were not holding water. So pretty straightforward there. And then nowadays you can start to get metal roofs. They don't have to all be ugly. They actually have these metal roofs now that you can put granules so they look like shingles. You can pick the colors. It's kind of like going to any paint store and picking that. You can pick any color you want for the shingles, for the little granules that go on top. So you have a metal roof that'll last a super long time, and you have the granules on top to make it look however you want. So again, and then we have all of the price to replace all that stuff. All right. Okay. Different types of foundations. People, I'll tell you right now, one of the biggest struggles outside of like teaching my inspectors how to interact with people and read people's emotions and sort of like listen to their secondary conversation is with structural and foundation issues. And so obviously as a realtor, this is normally like a #1 priority. You're like, I don't want my clients buying a house with foundation issues. I mean, even if you don't like your clients, I mean, for the liability of it, because foundation issues are typically expensive to fix. So the thing I'll tell you is there's all kinds of different foundations. We'll obviously comment on the what the foundation is and all the things we're supposed to. But the thing you really want to pay attention to, and this is one of the reasons we don't have the clients show up at the beginning of the inspection, is let's just say there's a drainage issue on the side of a house. Well, maybe the foundation's a little deteriorated. If it's the kind of house that are like a mobile home or something that has a crawl space, maybe there's some damage under there. Maybe that's causing a portion of the house to sink, and we start to see windows and doors not closing right, and we see settling cracks in the house, and then maybe like it's even gone so far that there's like some truss damage in the attic. Well, we don't know that, right, when we look at just the drainage issue, right? So I'll tell you a worst case scenario. I actually got called in after the normal home inspector was there. So the normal home inspector had missed that this tree was real. This was in Florida. There was this large oak tree that was right near the side of the house, and it was close enough to the house that it should have been called out. Well, once they were doing their final walkthrough, and once they had removed the daybed, you could actually see that there was all this trim down the bottom that had had really shoddy repairs, and been moved again and separated again. And basically the tree roots were, causing the floor structure to move. And so they called me in to sort of write up like what they thought the cost was going to be to fix it. And the realtor was freaking out because of course she's like, well, we need to close. We're supposed to close like literally this afternoon. And I said, you should not close. Like, this is a significant amount of damage. And it's really good that she took that advice, because what ended up happening was insurance ended up covering it because they didn't close. So they basically took the claim with the damage, which ended up being like $27,000 worth of work, because it was the whole wall, the foundation, up in the attic. I mean, it was like the whole side of the house had to be rebuilt. And it ended up being covered by insurance because they did not close. Now, had they closed, and the new owner was there, the new insurance company would have said, no, that's a pre-existing conditioning. We're not covering it. And then there would have been this long battle fight between buyers, sellers, and you guys know how that all works out. So I know it's a stressful thing to not close when you think you're going to close, but if you do that final walkthrough and there's something really significant like that, man, you got to be really careful, because nobody wants to write a $27,000 check if they thought that the insurance could have covered it. All right, again, problems and symptoms, you got water penetration, the soil moves, wet soil. If you've ever gone somewhere where there's like a concrete and it moves or cracks a little bit, or like if there's some concrete stairs going up to the front of the back of the house that starts to settle, there's a couple reasons behind that. The first one is they have pretty strict rules on how they compact the soil underneath the foundation of the house, but they don't do it outside the foundation of the house. So what happens is you don't have compacted soil, and then wet soil doesn't hold as much weight as dry soil. So the earth underneath those concrete stairs gets wet and it settles a little bit, which is why you see that movement or a little bit of cracking. So that's what's going on there, which is why we recommend everybody, you always want to get the all water, like rainwater, roof water, all of that stuff should be sloping away from the house. If you talk to a structural engineer, they would tell you, we love to see it 10 feet from the foundation. Of course, that's not always possible, but a good rule of thumb is about an inch of drop for every foot away. So even when you have those houses that are kind of near each other, or there's a wall or a fence there, you still want a couple feet of slope, even if you make a little trench there, to keep the water away from the foundation. Because I'll tell you, we do a 1980 house, and if that's there, we see no issues. If it's sloping this way, the foundation's just deteriorating. At the end of the day, two things: concrete and water don't mix. I mean, they actually do mix. So it just starts to eat away at the concrete. I mean, that's water is one of the things that you create concrete with. But the second thing is that concrete acts like a sponge. So if it's sitting with water up against it, it will slowly suck up the water out of the soil. And then of course, drywall will do the same thing. I've been called in. We'll end up with mold in a closet because the backyard is draining towards the house. The foundation's absorbing water. The drywall absorbs water. There's nothing to dry that area out in the closet, and boom, now you have a mold problem inside the closet. All right. Let's see. Okay, HVAC. This would probably be like the third biggest problem behind foundation issues and the cost of a new roof. Again, I'm not going to run through these, but basically, your gas furnace is going to last you 20, 25 years. Obviously, they can go longer than that. Air conditioners tend to last about 15 years. You can get a little more out of that, but we use them a lot here in Arizona. And again, I always warn clients. Oh, hold on, gotta let somebody in. Hopefully that worked. Let's see. I've seen. Listen, you can buy super high efficiency, multi-stage, both air conditioners and furnaces. I've seen on really high-end houses, they'll replace 4 air conditioners, and it's $45,000 just for the air conditioners, and then they didn't even get into the heat side of things yet. So you could spend as much as you want. I mean, it's just like anything else. You could buy a $10,000 car, and you could buy a $100,000 car. So it's just a personal choice there. And sometimes, again, going back to the thermal camera, if you do have a house with baseboard heat, in-floor heat, whatever the case might be, well, sometimes thermal. I think, again, not so much in the valley, but if you go up into the mountains and stuff like that, you'll start to see these things. The thermal camera is great because we can run the stuff and you'll literally see, the hot water or the electricity running through either the baseboard through the floor, and we can show that things are working. Things we found in the past in mountain houses would be one section of that isn't working, and they might be having issues heating the whole house, and they don't know why. We're like, oh, well, because you're not getting hot water to this one room, and you can easily see that with the thermal camera. Okay, a couple of things that I like to talk about here. First of all, let's talk about Gfcis and Afcis. Some people have heard of them. Not everybody knows the difference. Every time I talk to a client, they've never heard of the Afci. So the Gfci, the G stands for grounding. And these have to be within 6 feet of anywhere with water. So the exterior of the house, the garage, bathrooms, laundry rooms, and the kitchen, right? And the idea is grounding means you would be getting electrocuted. And so the idea is, if electricity is going through you instead of through the outlet, through the ground, it is designed to trip off. And you want those to be right near there because you want them to trip as quickly as possible. And so you're way more likely to become the ground and get electrocuted near water. So that's the reason behind that. One of the misconceptions I hear is you'll see somebody does a flip and they put one right here by the sink, and then there's another outlet, and those aren't. And they go, well, no, we got one near us. No, anything within 6 feet of a sink or water source should have a GFCI on it. AFCI is something that it became a rule in 2002, so you start to see it in like 04, 05 houses. And instead of the G, it's an A. The A stands for arcing. So the idea is you have two wires in the wall rubbing together. Maybe the sheathing gets rubbed away, and you get a little jumping of the electricity across the wires. So that's a fire hazard. That sometimes is the reason behind old houses catching on fires, because the house has shifted little bit by little bit over the last 50, 60, 70 years. Wiring in the wall gets rubs, and then you got this arcing. I have a brand new house, so I had these AFCIs, and one of them actually tripped, and it was because my cleaning people were there, and they had some kind of like faulty vacuum that had plugged in with some wiring problem, and it literally had tripped my AFCI. I was like, how did that happen? So now the AFCIs you will find in the electrical panel. Those are not in the house, those are in the electrical panel. And the only problem with those is in 0405, when they started using them, there was a squared E version of them that have a blue button. So if you look in the electrical panel and there's a blue button, most of those have been recalled because they don't usually work. If you see one that's kind of purpley blue and is like 2012, 2013, that's actually fine. Those are not recalled. So there's some confusion around that. So if you see Federal Pacific panels, Zinsco panels, early Sylvania panels, Challenger panels, all of these have known to cause issues. So people always say, well, Kurt, how do you and your team talk to buyers about it? At the end of the day, right, back to the whole theory, we're a home buyer advisor. We're there to make sure you don't inherit problems unknowingly. I'm going to tell you right now, you can look out through the valley. There's thousands of houses that have Federal Pacific panels, aluminum wiring, and they're not all going up in smoke right now. But as the buyer, you are potentially buying a house with a known hazard. Now, if the panel's in great shape and it's never had an issue, maybe there's never an overload. I mean, the basic premise is they don't trip when they're supposed to, right? So if you ever have an overload situation and it doesn't trip, that's a potential fire hazard. Now, what I try to remind people is I go, listen, you're buying a $500,000 house. This might be $2,000, maybe $3,000 to replace the panel. And if all of the realtor things are important, like the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the location near schools, near work. If all of that's right, don't let yourself get emotionally tied up in the fact that maybe it's time for a new electrical panel. And the reality is, in that neighborhood, that every house on that block either still has that electrical panel or has paid to replace it. And it's just the cost of doing business for buying a house in that neighborhood. Okay, last thing that I see trips up, not just realtors and clients, but 90% of home inspectors don't understand this aluminum wiring issue. So you have what's called multi-strand and you have what's called single strand. So single strand is just one piece of aluminum wiring. Multi-strand would be multiple like this. So multi-strand aluminum wiring is fine. Never, that's not an issue. You just want to make sure it has antioxidant base on it. This thing that I see trip up inspectors is the single strand. The single strand aluminum wiring is not always a problem. So it's only multi-branch single strand aluminum wiring. So what does this mean? If you look at an electric panel and single strand aluminum wiring is going to the air conditioner and back, or to the furnace and back, or to the range and back, to the dryer and back, it's totally fine. You could bring an electrician in, they could replace the whole panel, they would replace all the other wiring, they're not going to replace that. So I've seen inspectors call that out, and that's a mistake. There's no problems by code or anything else with that type of. So where the problem is, if you're to look at this conference room that I'm at, if you've got wiring in the wall going from outlet to TV to lights to fans to whatever, that's considered multi-branch single-strand aluminum wiring. There's different ways to remediate it. Usually in Arizona, you can do what's called pigtailing. So you make the last 4 inches just before the outlet, just before the light copper. But you have to connect the copper and the aluminum in a certain way. You can't just use a regular old wire nut. So when we find aluminum wiring in the panel, what we'll do is we'll open up 1 or 2 outlets to see if it's been pigtailed, and then if it's been pigtailed, we'll see if it's been pigtailed properly. So if you've got like a really old 20-year-old red wire nut, it wasn't done properly, and you basically still have the same problem, which is copper wire and aluminum wiring up against each other, which can cause corrosion and fire hazard. They've got, if you're busy, if you're bored on your computer, you can Google search Alumicon. Basically, there's this little gel in there that both wires go into to prevent any corrosiveness between the two. There's a couple other workarounds. You can literally buy that gel in toothpaste tube form, and you can put that in the wire nut, and basically just trying to prevent that corrosion. All right. So those are most of the common problems. I will say flippers, just because I did this house yesterday, was one of the worst flips I've ever seen. Man, loose outlets, they wire the outlets wrong. What else? Lights that don't work, lights that are weird. I literally had some lights that you couldn't turn off. It was a crazy situation. So you got to be careful when you're buying a flip. You got to know whether the people seem to know what they were doing or didn't know what they were doing. All right, plumbing problems. Your most common thing you're gonna run into is polybutylene. If you were to Google polybutylene, you're gonna see this gray piping, usually with like either copper or black fittings on the end. It's a known problem. In the beginning, when they first did it, which was like late 80s, early 90s, the fittings would overheat near the water heater and cause leaks. Nowadays, now that more time has gone on, the chlorine in our drinking water interacts with the poly in a way that creates little pinhole leaks, and you get leaks behind the wall. So that time frame is like, again, mid 80s to mid 90s. So that doesn't mean a 1950, 1960 house doesn't have it, because if they had a plumbing leak in that time frame and they replaced a bunch of piping, it might be replaced with polybutylene. The one way I've had listing agents literally tell me, oh no, that's not polybutylene, because they're that kind of an agent. There's a little ASTM number on the side of the piping, and you can just Google that, and if you get the right ASTM number, it's gonna just bring up polybutylene. Now you might get 3 ASTM numbers. You got the one for the piping, which would be obvious, then you have the one for the fitting, and then you sometimes have one if there's an elbow. So if the first thing you bring up says like copper fitting, that's for the fitting, you just go to the next ASTM number. Okay, now that everybody's heard of this, cast iron and Orangeburg piping, very common 50s, 60s, 70s, used for sewer drain line pipes. A couple of problems. One is they both have a lifespan of about 50 years. Orangeburg's a little worse than cast iron, because at least cast iron, you can jet it out and clean it and get a couple more years out of it. If it's not in bad shape. The Orangeburg is like this, almost like this compressed paper material. And if you try to jet it, it'll basically just shred it all out, and then you're totally hosed. So if you have this, as the realtor, you're really going to want to try to negotiate that into your deal. Again, I don't tell you what to negotiate, but Orangeburg, if you find it, you're pretty much like, hey, it's probably time to replace it. But I have a little bit of good news. It's not great news, but good news. If we were having this training 15, 20 years ago, you literally had to bring people in and dig up all of the sewer line from wherever the problem starts to wherever the problem ends, or if you're replacing the whole thing. So it could be expensive. I've seen it cost $30,000, $40,000. Nowadays, if the line is structurally sound, they actually just dig down in one spot and can go under the house and can go out to the city main, and they actually re-sleeve inside the old piping. So still expensive, but not the $30,000 expensive. You're usually looking, like the bare minimum for re-sleeving, you're starting at about $4,500, and you should figure that it's going to be $150 to $200 per foot that needs to be re-sleeved. That's about what it ends up working out. So it's $1,000 for every 5 feet. All right. Water heaters sometimes throw people for a loop. I can tell you a really funny story. We don't touch them. We don't do anything with them. We literally just look at them and document, the date, the size, whether it's gas or electric or propane. I had a situation years ago where someone called me and go, "What did you do to my water heater? It's not working." And it was only like 3 years old. And I came home and I started messing with it. Now we're smelling gas. I'm like, listen, we don't touch it. We just take all the information off of it, make sure it's not leaking, corroding, no problems with TBR valve or any of that stuff. And then we check at like say the kitchen to make sure it's hot water. Like, it's very simple, right? It's a hot water heater. We check to make sure it's working, making hot water, and it's not leaking. So as it turned out, the guy's like son-in-law was a plumber. He came over, was a known issue with that water heater, but it just so happened to break from the time that I was there with the realtor and the client to about 4:30 when the buyer got home. And so if you do enough inspections, you're gonna have a little bit of bad luck. One thing I'll point out though, and it looks like this picture is not, no, it's done correctly. Okay, you see this? We write this down. This little thing, the pipe hanging down here, is what's called a sediment trap. So we'll write this down, and it makes the equipment basically last longer. The idea is you got this trap here, the gas goes here, any junk inside there would drop down, and then the gas goes up. So if this were just a trap and if we were to go over it, that's not done right. And if it's not there, we also write that down. Sometimes people freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, there's a problem with the gas piping. Like, not exactly. It will just help the equipment last longer by not letting any of that junk into the actual equipment, whether it be for this or the furnace. And this, if you were to have your water heater flushed once a year, which I realize almost no one does, but it's a good idea, they would also clean out that sediment trap. So again, the thing to know for a realtor is, obviously we've all seen that they last 20 years. They're only about $1,000, $1,500 even fully installed. So a lot of times you can make that money up in the efficiency of the new ones. But the average lifespan is going to be about 8 to 12 years, and that's just because it's got water. Water causes deterioration, and it is what it is. This is always a difficult conversation. You're inspecting a 1960s, 1970s house, and the windows are 50, 60 years old. Maybe they still work, maybe they don't. The problem is windows are just stupid expensive. If you've ever shopped them, that's why. Usually, I mean, maybe that's a little high, $650, but nice windows. The reality is 20 to 25 years is all you can expect for a reasonable window. And the reality is if they're older than that, you probably are going to make your money up in a couple of years just with the energy efficiency of the newer ones. But we find problems with doors and windows all the time, and not everybody wants to hear it, because if you've ever shopped for windows, you bring the window salesperson in, and then next thing you know, they're giving you a quote for like 14 grand. You're like, dude, I can buy like a car for 14 grand. That's rough. So let's see here. Okay, the thing I want to talk about here, your clients walk into a house, it was built in 2003, person selling it, your client's like, oh, fantastic, this house feels new, and to them it's new. So the conversation we have with them is all the appliances are from 2003. Guess what? I mean, it's 2022 now. It makes them 19 years old. So if you were buying a 2003 Buick, you would have an odometer on it. And then if 2 months later the water pump broke on your new Buick from 2003, you wouldn't be surprised by that. So you want to make sure with your clients that they have the right expectations, that these are all mechanical items. And it's not if they're going to break, it's when they're going to break. They're mechanical and they break, and that's it. Now, of course, we have seen really old ovens from the 50s and 60s that are still going strong and working great. But again, if you're buying a house, basically if the appliances are more than 10 years old, we just have a very mild write-up that says, hey, they're more than 10 years old, so you should just be budgeting, because I don't want you or your client to buy a house, that 2003 house, and then in the next 6 months they need a new fridge, oven, and microwave, and they're like, oh my god, I bought 11. You're like, no, you bought a house with basically like 170,000 miles on it. So that's the thing to remember. But as the realtor, you can't negotiate. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but it's hard to negotiate a new fridge, a new oven when it's working fine on the day of the inspection, right? So the extended warranty is a lot of times the nice middle ground. Yes, it's all older, and again, I don't know what the experience level of everybody out here is, but if you've not dealt with extended warranties a lot, you got to know that they're designed to keep the equipment running. Like, you don't buy a $500 extended warranty and then they buy you like a new $8,000 HVAC system. They don't buy you a new $4,000 refrigerator. They will either pay someone to go out or pay the person you had out, reimburse you to basically keep the equipment going. That's it. So just keep that in mind. It's not insurance, doesn't save the day every single time. Okay. So again, I talked about thermal imaging. We'll do the electrical panel. If there's loose wiring in the walls, we'll pick that up. The most common thing we find is plumbing leaks, roof leaks, and none of them, well, I should say 70% of them are not visible. We'll find leaks in the ceiling Could be from the condensate line, it could be from the condensation on the freon, it could be an actual roof leak, and there's literally no sign of it. And so the thermal camera, as you saw, picks it up. It lights up like a Christmas tree. So again, some inspectors have these, but they only bring them out if they have like a concern. If they see a window that looks like it has an issue, they'll bring it out. The difference with us is we literally scan the entire outside, the entire inside as part of every inspection. Not to make this all about us by any means. Okay. These could all be separate classes, so what time we got? Okay, perfect. I'm going to touch on them. Everybody probably knows what a termite inspection is. Basically, as a home inspector, if we see termite activities, we can see any insects, rodents, birds, squirrels, etc. We'll write that stuff down. The termite inspection is basically a guarantee from somebody with a pest control license that says, yes, this house is currently free of termites. So that's the difference. We write down what we can find. The termite, the WDIR is what it's actually called. Wood destroying insect inspection report, I think stands for, is like a guarantee from the pest company. Yes, you don't have any activity. If you do have activity, there's a couple that I'll share this with you. You might know this already, but excuse me. So we have subterranean termites here in Arizona. So you don't see houses that are tented. They basically, there's only a couple months a year that it's not too hot and not too cold where they come up, and they don't nest. Because of that, they don't nest in your house. They don't nest in the attic. If you were to go to other parts of the country with different kinds of termites, they literally get in the attic and they nest there and they never leave. And that's why you have to tent the whole house, because otherwise they'll cause structural damage. So it's not really if you get them here, it's when you get them. And when you do get them, we spot treat them. Usually runs $400 or $500, and they, the pest control company will give you like a 1-year warranty. You could pay more and get a 5-year warranty if you want to. Just also on that, if you're not familiar, that you can actually get this glass spray around the outside of your house, which is usually about $5 a square foot, and that it's like 100% effective against scorpions getting in your house. So if you have that concern, so the sewer scope, we talked about that. Our company offers it. We charge it $200, and we basically, it's kind of gross, but it's a colonoscopy for the house, right? We go down through the sewer line all the way out, and we're looking for buildup, root intrusion, structural damage, offsets, and not everybody knows what an offset is, but pipes should be connected like this. So if they're like this, offset a little bit, that could start things to get blocked up. And what sucks is it's all 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 feet underground. Somebody's got to dig down and fix that problem. So you're usually looking at thousands of dollars to fix repairs. Now, it is $200, $250, $300, and we charge something a little bit different. Some clients say, well, I don't want to spend $200 just to find out there's nothing wrong. And I'm not going to talk you into anything. My whole approach to all of this stuff is like, hey, this is what's available, this is what you learn, this is what it costs, or don't pay, don't learn, potentially inherent problems. It's your house, I don't really care what you do. But some people like to spend the $200 just to find out and go, oh, there's nothing wrong. Great, now we can safely move forward knowing that I don't have to drop $3,000 or $4,000. Pool and spa inspections, most inspectors offer that. I've not seen great reports on it. We operate the equipment, it's all like, it's visual. The big thing, I think, that we have all these write-ups for your clients that help them understand the Virginia Graham-Baker Act, which not everyone's heard of. Basically in 2008, there were new laws instituted for pool filters now, that all for commercial buildings, but it's a good idea for you to do it on your residential one. And the whole idea is, if you can imagine like a 10-year-old girl with long hair getting her hair caught underwater in the filter system, that actually happened, which is what causes law to happen. And now they have new types of covers for the filters and for all the equipment in the bottom of the pool to prevent that from happening and anyone getting hurt. We don't do a lot of radon testing here. People have questions about it. I know a lot about it. Radon only comes from one place. There's a lot of misconceptions. It comes from the depletion of uranium. If I had a pound of uranium and 4.3 billion years, I would then have a half a pound of uranium. It's called a radioactive half-life. And when the uranium gives off about, I think it's a alpha, it goes to becomes something different. Like uranium-239 becomes uranium-241 becomes uranium-239, and down the chain until at some point it becomes radon, which is a gas. And if we breathe the gas in, it's basically like a sunburn for our lungs. That's the best way to think of it. Second leading cause of lung cancer behind smoking. And so it's real. It's the rule is you want it below 4 picocuries per liter in your house. And again, there are some hot spots here. Again, some people choose to test, some people choose not to. Mold, that's a whole other class. But the concept basically is if you had a flip, this would be a worst case scenario. And they do a really crappy job of cleaning up old water damage. And they spread all the mold throughout. It's a lot like spilling a bag of flour in your kitchen and then just putting it all over the place. So 6 months later, it's all still in the house, but it's on all the flat surfaces, it's floating in the air, it's in your air ducts, and there are ways to clean that up. So that would be like, you can't see it though. So the only way to know is to do air testing. Let's see here. Lead paint, we can test for lead paint. We have this little tester that you do a little score mark, go down to the base layer of paint. It's only for houses older than 1978. Most houses in 1970 don't have it. If I'm going to find lead paint, it's usually in one spot here or there in a really old house, 1910, 1920. I don't find it in the 1950s, 60s houses very often. Asbestos is a common misconception. People think it's a thing for old houses. It's not. The EPA has rules for commercial buildings. So if we were to demolish more than 160 square feet and renovate in here, we would have to do asbestos testing. And the way it works is every material that you're gonna take apart needs to be tested, and then you have to do a certain amount of tests per certain square foot in order to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is no asbestos. And it doesn't matter the year of the house. It's not an old house thing. That's all wrong. Some states, Arizona's not one of them, have implemented similar rules for residential settings. So in Colorado, they're one of them. If you're going to demolish more than like 30 square feet, 32 square feet, you have to do that same testing. And I'm going to tell you right now, we find, you could go to Home Depot right now and find joint compound that has asbestos in it. So we find asbestos all the time in residential settings, new houses, new buildings. So that is a thing. So if you want more information on it, I can help you with that. Septic is its own thing. The one common misconception I try to get people off of here is that just because the house is on septic doesn't mean that you won't consider a sewer scope. The septic company, when they come out and they pump the tank and they do the visual camera thing, they're not looking at the line from the house to the septic tank. So if your client wants to know that the line is in good condition, you still need the sewer scope. You need the home inspection, you need the sewer inspection, then you need the septic inspection. Septic does not cover sewer, they're separate. And then air quality, the last thing I tell people is like, you know, the springtime, and you got the sun coming in at the angle and you see all that stuff in the air, all the little particles. That is, it's skin cells, it's insect parts, it's dust, it's mold, it's, it's parts of plants. And if you want, we could do those same air samples, and basically we have about 20 different line items that we can line out and tell your client, hey, this is what's going on in the air. Couple of reasons this would make sense. Let's just say you've got like elevated fiberglass levels. That might indicate that an air duct in the attic is damaged, and it's basically sucking in attic air into the air ducts, which is not something you want. And you'll see people, it's not necessarily like toxic, but it's still bad for you to be breathing in all this fiberglass. So those are the most common extra ancillary things that people will look into. And that's it. Any questions? So it looks like we lost a couple people. I must have bored them. If you want to scan that QR code, that'll take you there. You can download our contact info. And if you want, I can shoot you both a little intro video on how we are like way more technologically advanced than all the inspection that you might be used to. And I can also send you a copy of this PowerPoint. You can have all those average costs, average, replacement lifespans, etc. So it's been super weird talking to my phone while I'm standing here, but I hope I wasn't too bad. Let's see if there's any comments. Anybody? Bueller? All right, well, if there's no other questions, then I promised I would do 45, 50 minutes, and we are right there. And again, you can shoot us a note, shoot me an email. Even if you get, one thing I always tell people is we're here to be a resource. I've done thousands and thousands of houses, so if you get some crazy inspection report, I've seen one where the guy showed up and started doing black light all around the house. You can only imagine what you find. I'm happy to make comments. Mary asked, how do I request the slides? Just either scan that or email me. It's Kurt with a C, C-U-R-T at inspectorsovercoffee.com. Here, I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me find this.
How many inspectors do you have, Kurt?
Home inspectors right now we have 4. Termite we have 2. Sewer we have 2. Let's see. So we never have availability problems when people need like quick turnarounds.
Oh, just very quickly, any comments on new homes, like inspections on new homes, and what is the process?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So there's a couple of thoughts around it. One is that the city code inspector was just there, but again, they're just making sure that the house was built properly. And what I can tell you is that a lot of them have relationships with these builders, and they just kind of go, yeah, thank you. At the end of the day, we serve the same role, which is to act as a home buyer advisor and make sure that you're not inheriting problems unknowingly. And I'll give you a worst case scenario. Some people like to wait and go, well, I'll get the 12-month warranty. Excuse me. When my 12-month warranty is running out, I will get an inspection. But I have done houses where we find $20,000, $30,000 worth of structural damage because one corner of the house, the drainage wasn't done properly because the builder just wasn't worried about it, didn't think about it, had nothing to do with code. And now that side of the house settled. And again, and there are some other things that we do, like we provide property history reports, we provide recall reports. So even on their appliances, you could spend $400 and at least they're still going to get this continued recall report as long as they own the house, so that if there's a lot of it's just peace of mind. Again, so it's a personal choice. Look, some people buy a brand new car and want a mechanic to look at it. Other people go, no, I'm good. You can buy a brand new car that somebody test drove 5 times and you might find a problem on it. So it's a personal choice. But I do remind people that builders build houses as cheaply as possible with the cheapest, labor that they can find. Some people think, I didn't really get into it, but since I appreciate the question, everybody thinks that, well, what's the age range I need to get a sewer scope on? All of them. Like I had a sewer scope done on my brand new house, and I found that the people who built it had poured all this like paint down the drain. We just did one like 2 weeks ago, brand new. I mean, I'm like, nobody's ever lived in it. And they basically ran the sewer line out here, ran it right back in the house. It was mind blowing. So like thousands of dollars worth of work, but again, the builder had to fix that, which is all well and good, but a lot of people go, well, I mean, it hasn't backed up yet. Yeah, trust me when I tell you, you don't want your sewer backing up because that's a whole nother thing, right? Like to properly clean up that, it's sewage, right? So you don't want it in your house. And then when you do get in your house, you got to clean it up. It's very expensive. And then you got to run testing to test for E. coli and coliform on the flat surfaces where it's a whole thing. So again, spend $200, spend $300, it's a $600,000 house, and just know that there's nothing wrong. I mean, again, okay, so we got asked how many inspections. I'm going to tell you, I've seen some money grabs from some certain inspection companies, I won't say who, that says you need 6 inspections. It's totally ridiculous. I highly recommend a pre-drywall inspection, though. And basically, it's when you walk into the house, you can see all the framing. Basically, we can see that all of the pipes are connected properly, all the electrical's connected properly, the HVAC, the attic access. And the most recent one I did, I said, look, this isn't really part of the inspection, but in both the main bedroom and the living room, I'm not seeing any lighting. And these are both really huge rooms. And so again, it's not part of the inspection, I'm saying it's missing, but now's the time to run the wiring for that. And they were like, whoa, no. And it ended up that they were 99% sure, I don't know what ended up happening with it, but they were pretty sure that all of those lights were supposed to be there and that they paid extra for that. So it was a several $1,000s catch that we did that you don't want to be doing once the house is built and drywall's up, and running wiring and all that stuff is a huge pain. But while you're looking at all the 2x4s, it's very easy to fix that problem. So, and again, because we use drones on new builds, we can't walk on roofs for new builds, condos, pre-drywall, all that kind of stuff. So the drone is really helpful in that situation as well. So I'd say, I'll tell you what I did. I did pre-drywall, and I did right as before we were moving in, because I just didn't want any of those issues that cause issues down the road. I'm not going to wait a year to find out there's a water drainage issue, leaking issue. And again, I know I'm looking at my own house, but I'm human, right? I'm not taking my work home and me doing a home inspection every time I go home. I just want to sit home and have a glass of wine, right? So I appreciate those questions. Are there any other? Oh, you know what I could do here? Let's see here. It's a question we usually get. Let me go here. I just want to show, I get these questions sometimes. Sorry, it's HomeSmart's fault. This is very slow. Here we go. So the pricing, we start at $299. The price for the home inspection only goes up for the bigger the house, kind of fair, right? The more we got to look at, the more we charge. And then basically, we have both standalone pricing for all these extra add-ons, and then we have, if you add them on. In other words, if we can get it done at the same trip during the home inspection, it's a little less expensive because you're saving us a trip. And what people like about us is we literally get, like, we write the reports on site. So you almost always get them right as we're leaving the house. Obviously, there's circumstances where you don't. You'll always get it the same day. Usually you get it like right as we're leaving the house. And I'll show you another video if you want to email me, but our reports are super like progressive and cool. We don't do PDFs. They're color coded. They have videos. They're interactive. Your clients can zoom around. They're web-based. You can create a PDF out of it. You lose the videos, but I always joke that most of the inspection industry is stuck in the 90s between the reports they write and the equipment they don't use. We don't have that problem. Again, not to sound cocky, but we do. I always say we're twice as thorough and also twice as fast, twice as efficient, and you have everything from us right away. So that's it. And we are inspectors over coffee. So our inspectors have little cans of coffee with them that are chilled. And if you and your clients like coffee, we'll give you coffee while we're doing the walkthrough summary. Diana said, what is the website? It's just if you search Inspections Over Coffee, you'll find us. It's inspectionsovercoffee.com or homeinspectionsovercoffee.com. Both will work. This is great. I love all the questions. Any other questions? All right. Well, now you have my contact info. So if you need anything else, but anyway, I'm recording this. It'll be available online later. So obviously these are way better with attendance than me just recording something into a camera. So thank you for coming out. Thanks for spending almost an hour with me. And hopefully we get a chance to work together in the future. All right, I'm turning it off. Take care.